Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Sunshine and 72 today. 53 at O'Hare. Next news 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So a 27-year-old Afghan national was arrested for allegedly conspiring to plot an election day massacre in this country. Brett Baer reported on it last evening.
The FBI says it has foiled a terror plot set to take place inside the U.S. on Election Day. A criminal complaint just unsealed within the last 30 minutes says 27-year-old Nasser Tahedi conspired with ISIS and obtained firearms and ammunition to conduct that attack in the name of the terrorist organization, ISIS. The Justice Department says he took steps to move his family overseas and acquire machine guns and ammunition. FBI Director Chris Wray says tonight, quote, this defendant, motivated by ISIS, allegedly conspired to commit a violent attack on Election Day here in our homeland. Terrorism is still the FBI's #1 priority, and we will use every resource to protect the American people.
#1 priority after pronoun usage. The person arrested has been legally in the United States since September of 2021. He was granted special parole permission to enter the country during Operation Allies Refuge following the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Isn't that interesting? The conversation we had about vetting Afghan refugees from any place, but particularly Afghan when you have dominated by radical Islamic terrorists like those who constitute the Taliban, number one. Number two, isn't that just another indictment of the Afghan policy and the Afghan withdrawal when we couldn't get known Afghan nationals who were allies, who helped our military, like translators and others. We couldn't get them out. But this guy got out, and he's been here for the better part of 3 years, more than 3 years, and now plotting against this country.
And the sickening part is some of them they couldn't get out because the CDC wouldn't let them in because they didn't have COVID vaccinations. Sick. Our government is not working. Nothing works in our government.
For more on this and other related issues, please be joined by Indiana Senator Mike Braun, who is poised to be the next governor of Indiana come November 5th. Senator Braun, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be back on. Been a while. Always enjoy the show.
Thank you. And so, I know tackling illegal immigration is an issue for you both as a senator and will be an issue as governor of Indiana as well, since every state's a border state these days. So I just want to get your reaction to this latest development and general commentary on what you plan to do as governor on the topic.
I'll go back to shortly after Biden got elected and went down to the border with like 16, 17 other Republican senators. And, of course, it was everything that was in place under Trump with record low illegal crossings under the same legislative template then as Biden and Harris inherited. They just said, the heck with it. We're going to open everything up, and, of course, got up to record illegal crossings of, 250 to 300,000 a month. But the part that was most alarming would be the gotaways. Those are the ones that you can see crossing, but you don't confront them, or the folks that bring their suitcase into Mexico City and then get deluxe kind of crossing help from the cartels. Up to about 150 nationalities. That's almost all countries. And the fact that you now are making a big deal out of it is only due to the fact that you are hemorrhaging at polls where that issue, along with the sugar high economy and inflation, will still be the two drivers on the national scene. But they've tried to flip-flop. Our borders are now the nominee for their party. finally made it there. But no, the things that could happen when you've done that and you've been behind it crassly to maybe get votes down the road, it's been 3.5 years of it. We have no idea what's going on in this country, and you can blame the two of them, and especially the czar, who now wants to be the next president. There is so much that we do not know when you have open borders, and it's a matter of time before something like this does happen. Thank goodness this was caught and ferreted out, and this would be, like you said, from a legal immigrant, because there were so many immigrants that we didn't vet in the rush to bring folks into this country. We now put up with the uncertainty of what might happen.
So when you become governor, how are you going to tackle illegal immigration?
You're going to have to do what Governor Abbott has done in Texas, DeSantis in Florida. Every state has got some impact from it. The thing that makes Indiana unique, the crossroads of America, we're kind of like the main channel of drug distribution through the country because of all the interstates that run through this state. And when you talk to sheriffs, chiefs of police in some of these smaller towns along 65, along 69, they've got their hands full. Our own state capital of Indianapolis contends with it disproportionately. So you're going to have to weigh in, even though you might be going into a different jurisdiction politically, like Indianapolis, which has not been run well over the last 9 years under Democratic leadership, no different than many large cities around the country. Governors are not going to be able to stand idly by along with their legislatures when this stuff is happening. So you're going to have to take the initiative. You're going to have to weigh in. You're going to have to help the states that deal with it daily, and you're going to need to make sure you gird and prepare for the consequences within your own states.
Well, I know this won't be the same sort of issue if Trump is elected and Republicans regain control of the Senate, hold control of the House. But the issue of that we've seen play out in small town America, and I mean it's sort of emblematic of the larger attitude of government, which is an agenda that is completely at odds with its constituents. And we talked to the Yuma former chief of the Yuma sector, trying to get like how does Whitewater, Wisconsin, how does Springfield, Ohio, how does Charleroi, Pennsylvania, how does that happen? Somebody has to be making the call to send as many migrants from wherever to a specific small community, overwhelming those communities as we've seen play out, and that's got to be a concern for governors of any and every state. So I just wonder, particularly with your current post as a senator, what you understand about how what happened in those communities, just to use a few examples, can happen, and how to ensure that it doesn't happen in Indiana and, frankly, anywhere else.
I thought what was most interesting is when Abbott and DeSantis, especially Abbott, started busing illegal immigrants into places like Martha's Vineyard, New York City, Chicago. And all of a sudden you're hearing the cry of, "Uncle, don't do this. We give up. You're overwhelming us." That, to me, was the most kind of obvious clue that this wasn't working politically, even in some of their strongholds of deep blue politics and policy. And then they try to pivot, which is my observation about them, is they are fast-footed. They are much more agile on the political side of it and think that they can all of a sudden have an about face and now make it an issue. This is happening mostly, I think, behind the scenes on the clique that's been running the White House. I think Biden has been mostly a figurehead there, controlled by a group of advisors and his closest associates that have been behind it. And when you orchestrate it in such a way that it was relentless, and it was by policies that you took away that were working just because Trump had it in play, I mean, that's that is something politically that better resonate here on November 5th, and I think it will. All the polling we have shows that in our state of Indiana, that is up there, even though it's a national issue. It's number 2, just barely behind inflation and the economy.
Why are you leaving the Senate to run for governor? I mean, Senate 6-year terms. You're basically more or less in a safe seat. You could hang out there for as long as you'd like. So why make the move back home?
I came into politics under unlikely circumstances and odds, but lived the American dream, moved back to my hometown, my wife and I, years ago. She's had her only job as her business in her downtown. I got started a little later and grew a little hardscrabble company into a regional, then national company. 3 of our 4 kids run it with a good young executive team. That's the American dream. And when I look at even in our own state capital, what happened over the last 9 years to where you could take a weekend vacation from southern Indiana to go there, that's not happening anymore. And when you look at the national scene, where we have now grown the federal government to 25% of our GDP based upon the crisis of COVID, which was their dream. Rahm Emanuel never let a crisis go to waste. They've pulled it off. We're spending as much on interest as we are defense. I pledged I wouldn't do it more than 2 terms. Picking the right fork in the road and knowing where you can have the most impact. Hardly anybody vacates a U.S. Senate seat. I'm doing it because I'm fearful that if we don't have governors and they're going to stand strong, state by state, you've got one where you folks live in Illinois.
Yeah.
Folks are moving from Chicago into Northwest Indiana. And that's our benefit, but it's an indication that sooner or later people will not only vote differently, they'll vote with their feet. I want to be here to make sure none of that encroaches here. I think the states will be the entrepreneurs in government to fix the problems the federal government has not.
Well,
in a nutshell.
Indiana is kind of in an interesting position. I know people sort of like shrug their shoulders. It's a red state, so it's Republicans are in control. That's the end of the discussion, but it's actually not, and not to me at least, because we've seen it in Illinois when you have a long run of governance, of control of the state government, and you get a little complacent and you start doing things other than what you said you would do, and you start feeling invulnerable to public sentiment, and things can turn. And so, you're coming on the heels of 2 decades of uninterrupted Republican governance, and I wonder how, what's your assessment of the state and where there are improvements to be made so that there is a communication that there is no complacency here, and we're still, sort of pursuing small C conservative common sense reforms and so forth.
I'll go through every agency that we've got. There are 30 of them, nearly 30,000 state employees, and make sure that gets back to customer service, constituent service, and is run responsibly. Not to mention, I fixed healthcare in my own business many years ago. Healthcare, workforce education are the 2 big state issues, along with many others. But yes, you hit it on the head. There's a natural tendency towards complacency. We're not taking anything for granted. And I can tell you, when they got rid of Biden, which was a train wreck in November for them, they levitated up 5 to 7 points, not only vis-a-vis Trump in the presidency, but all the down ballot races. Trump has since rebounded. Many of the down ballot races, you look at the Senate races across the country, they don't enjoy that margin by state that he would. So we've got to get out, work hard, make the case, and it's an easy case to make. Do we want all these terrible federal policies to start creeping in states like Indiana just because we don't work hard enough? We've maybe plateaued in what the people, Hoosiers, would think. I'm not campaigning that way. I'm campaigning on being an entrepreneurial conservative that's going to take any plateauing that we've had in this state and turn it around and show what states can do. And hopefully you're looking at Indiana in the same way you do places like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and I do believe the solutions will be crafted at the state level. You cannot borrow now $1 trillion every 6 months. It was $1 trillion annually when I got there 6 years ago, and think that that's a good business plan. Make sure it doesn't creep into your own state. That's resonating. That's why we'll win the race.
Now, I have an important question to ask you that I've asked your last three predecessors. So going back to my man, Mitch Daniels.
And I have one question, too.
If elected governor of Indiana, will you commit to using the Indian National Guard to invade and take over Illinois and make it part of Hoosier land?
If you'll be my first lieutenant,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
And have you? I know your Democratic challenger is a former Republican. Have you had any debates with her?
We've had probably 10 gubernatorial forums, which would not have been formal debates. We just had 2 back-to-back last week, and she is trying to sell common sense and a different approach to state government. And she's on record as a Republican voting for Hillary Clinton, wanting to work in the Biden-Harris administration, and supports every crazy liberal idea that they do. That's not going to fly in Indiana.
Nope.
So, yes, we've litigated that already twice. We'll do it again at the end of October.
Senator Mike Braun, he is a U.S. Senator from Indiana, running to be the next governor of Indiana. He's on the ballot November 5th. For more information about him, support his candidacy, get involved in the last 3 weeks here. Mike Braun for Indiana, MikeBraunForIndiana.com. Senator Braun, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
This is Sean Thompson. When you go on vacation, does it make sense to have somebody else pack for you? Of course not. The same can be said for your retirement. Your 401k could be packed with things you don't know about or even need. If you're close to retirement,